Hello, friend. The mystical American Patriots Society is transmitting to you from beneath 4 million cubic feet of solid granite, in the burning heart of the Yellowstone caldera. This is a variety program for normal sandwich-eating Americans with some concerns about living in a deranged, post-Christian technocracy. So, keep your third eye on the sky and your ear to the ground, as Sumo and Smokestack connect your main brain vein to a higher plane. Are you ready? Stand by.
Oh, the future looks so bright. We're gonna need shades.
Are you?
You know?
Are you ripping on Bill Mitchell? What's his name?
I am.
Yeah, that guy.
I love that guy.
Man.
The thing about him is he just says what he says, and he just never changes in spite of any evidence.
Nope.
Or whatever. And the thing is, if you do that for long enough, circumstances eventually change where you look like you were right all along.
Yeah, that's true. The old broken clock.
The old broken clock method.
Yeah.
Which is, I use that method a lot.
I do admire his determination.
I love that guy. Yeah, it's so bright. We're gonna need shades.
Yep.
I reinstalled Counter-Strike for the duration of the plague. I don't know if you ever played that game.
I never did.
It was a great game. I played it when I was younger.
Okay.
It came out in 1999, and so I reinstalled it, and I was pleasantly surprised to find that tons of people are still playing it.
Sweet.
It's still very popular, and it also hasn't changed a bit. So in this time of madness, Counter-Strike Go is a steady, solid rock.
Cool. I was always a solitary gamer myself. I was thinking about kicking back to the Half-Life series and playing through that again.
Well, that's the thing. You know, the Half-Life Counter-Strike was made off the Half-Life engine.
Oh, well, I'll fit right in. Maybe I should try it.
Yeah, people, they made the Half-Life, and then, it was the 2000s, so people were a little crazy.
Yeah. And
they just took the code, and they made it into a terrorist versus counter-terrorist game. And it's still being played. I loaded it up, and there were still people calling me gay on it. And there was still
just like
people,
old times.
Still people spray painting softcore nudity on the walls of the game while they were going. Still one token black guy trying to get you to join his forum. Yeah. Where he would tell you hacks and tricks for various games. It was exactly the same. Nothing had changed at all. I'm sure it was a new generation, but they had taken up all the old customs.
It's good. It's good that cultures can still perpetuate themselves, even in this hyper-aware time.
I will say I was getting banned a lot, though, because I've gotten rusty and not playing in 10 years. So they were like, you suck, get out of here, because they've been playing for 10 years now.
Right.
And that's a lot of experience points to build up in your nervous system.
So you just get kicked out of that game and you go find another one? Yeah,
because I'll be on there, I'll be playing, and my kill-death ratio will be not good. And then they'll kick me out in favor of a bot.
Oh, that's gotta hurt.
It is, but I'm gonna get better. I'm practicing. I'm committed. But for some reason, there's always one. Black guys in America really they take the flame, the Olympic torch of both anime and of computer game hacks.
Okay.
They always have carried that my whole life. I'm not sure. Some of the white guys I know were into anime growing up, but every single black dude I knew
was into anime.
Yeah, even the not nerdy ones.
Okay.
Like just the ones that would play football and stuff. They'd also talk about like Naruto on the side.
That's I've never observed that.
Could just be where I was.
It might have been like a local thing.
It may be, but I don't know. Even I knew a guy. He did a stint in some let's say professional sports.
Okay.
Black fella, And he would just, even when he was in his professional sports, he would talk about his anime.
Okay.
Yeah, so I mean, it was just always there. It was always there, and I don't know why that took off there, but it did.
Wow, I didn't know anybody that was into anime when I was coming up.
What's wrong with you? Were you an American?
The
height of American culture was to be obsessed with things Japanese.
Well, I mean, there was Pokemon, but I didn't feel like that really counted.
I was a little too old for Pokemon. I felt like if I'd have been 4 years younger, I'd have been right in the epicenter of Pokemon.
Okay. That was the kid I carpooled with on the way to school. He was a couple years younger than me. He was super into Pokemon.
Yeah, I feel like I would have been into Pokemons.
Yeah.
I always say mons to anger the people that are into Pokemon.
Is that not a correct pluralization?
No, I think it's Pokemon is plural, like Pokemon is like geese.
What's the singular? What's the singular of a Pokemon?
A Digichew.
What?
I don't know.
This is why I never, I couldn't understand the grammar. I think it was inaccessible to me, so I just sort of passed it over.
Well, I, like most people, I think in the Western world, got into it via Dragon Ball Z. Okay.
Yeah, I remember that. There was something about the number 9,000.
Because it went on it's over 9,000. That's my favorite Twitter. If you just type Twitter with something with 9,000 in it, for a long time there was an automated bot that would reply to you and say over 9,000 really excitedly. I like to do that. But Yeah, Dragon Ball Z. That was really because I don't know why that caught fire. It really had no business doing so.
Was it not any good? Was it stupid?
No, it was great. It was great. It was something that could only have found root in like 2002. Okay, Okay. It was just like that era. It was in its time. Like I've tried to rewatch it and there was and it's like it could just be that I'm older. Mm-hmm. It's like this is really taking a long time for anything to happen. Because they tried to do this thing where they made one manga, of the comic books into one episode. Mm-hmm. But that didn't always translate well for pacing on television.
Right.
So it was like there'd be like 7 episodes where they'd just be screaming at each other in a row. Nothing would happen. You're just like, ah! Like seriously, there would be like 3 weeks in a row where you'd watch it and they'd just be powering up. Okay. And there was that. There was Gundam. I enjoyed Gundam. My favorite, probably the one that was most influential on me personally, was Trigun. It was my favorite anime.
Trigun. Did he have 3 guns?
That's the thing. He didn't. He only had 1. I'm not sure where that. I still to this day don't understand the Trigun name, because there was one guy who had a gun, and then everyone else on the planet also had a gun, and then at the end he turned out to be a half plant man. So I'm not sure where that came from at all.
That's a twist. A half plant man, with 1 gun, called Trigun.
Yeah, named Vash the Stampede. Because it was, I have always, my soul has a soft spot for space western. Mm-hmm. That's my go-to genre.
I didn't even know that was a thing.
Oh, yeah. Like, the genre of space western is like, you're in space, right? You've got spaceships. However, we're out on the fringes of the space colonized territory. Okay. And so it's a bit lawless. Okay. Like Firefly, great space western. Okay. Trigun. There's a few others, but Cowboy Bebop to some extent. But the space western was my.
What sort of livestock do you rustle in space?
Well, a lot of times they'd have cows, because it was like Firefly didn't have any aliens. It was just all people in space. Okay. And they would live. They had in the center of the galaxy was all the nice mega cities, but then you had all the poor people that lived like on these moons way out there with and they lived basically like it was 1800s, except sometimes spaceships would land and trade. Okay,
so there were prairies where they were grazing cattle.
Yeah.
Out on these. Okay.
And you could still run your, clandestine drug operation, trafficking exotic animals.
That's better. I was imagining a cow floating through space, with a helmet on.
No.
And like solar, somehow they made them solar powered so that they would
no. It's
fatten while exposed to the sun.
No, just imagine if it's a reimagining of the Old West on different planets rather than just on the same continent.
Oh, that sounds cool.
Yeah, it's a great thing. It's like it's a little bit of sci-fi, a little bit of Western.
Okay, right on. Maybe I'll check that out.
Yeah, so you should. You should. I've had a lot of trouble this week. My I'm upset with my spring kimono.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's the Great Waves. The Great Wave, the Japanese art. It's got that printed on it. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm just not feeling it this year. I feel like I need a cherry blossoms.
How often do you wear a kimono, and on what occasions?
I wear a kimono. Well, I only have 7. So
should work on that.
Yeah. Well, I wear a kimono about the house pretty regularly, out in public. I don't know, a couple times a month. I mean, the winter kimono is much more practical for, because the summer kimono is just, it's because this is my attack on blue jeans. Okay. Blue jeans are not trad. They're a garment for and by the Industrial Revolution and a symbol of your slavery. Really? Loose-fitting garments indicate a life of leisure and aristocracy. Oh. Because you're just like, I don't have to do anything. I'm just wearing a robe. Okay. And that's what I try to portray. There was a European garment called a banyan. I was talking with a friend on.
Wait, you're gonna have to back up though, because how are jeans a symbol of your slavery? I don't get it.
Well, I mean, like if you're wearing jeans, then you're a workman. Okay. You're by definition. They were made to you had to wrestle cows in them or work in a factory. And then people started making it cool just so that you would never notice that that's what you were doing. Look, no one can be like, hey, smokestack, get on the factory. And you're like, listen, I'm in a gown. Right. Right. It's the same with ladies and long fingernails. They put those on there so they're useless. Ah. And then you're like, I don't have to do things. I'm a fancy lady. Gotcha. Right. It's the modern thing on being pale. Used to it was good to be pale because it meant you didn't have to go out in the sun. Oh, because now everyone wants a tan. Right. For the same reasons. Having a tan and wearing blue jeans are the same thing.
So are you against having a tan?
I mean, I'm not.
I think it's good for you, right?
Well, you do need to every day expose your testicles to the UV light. I've said this consistently for many years. It's very good for you, very good for your hormonal imbalance. If you can't go outside every day naked, like maybe you live on an apartment, you get arrested for going out on the balcony, Yeah. You can get you a red light or UV light and just stand in front of it every morning. So for that, in that regard, I'm pro. But this obsession with being tanned,
So just only tan the genitals, leave the rest of the body pale.
Well, it's not that. It's just it's like Donald Trump, where he's like crazy orange.
Yeah, he's got the
except around his eyes,
the goggle lines. Yeah.
Like a lot of people, especially in Florida, they look like that all the time because they're doing these spray tans and stuff. And I'm like, just if you have if you have a tan, that means that that's like being a redneck sort of, means you have to work outside. Right. So I'm just promoting kimonos and Counter-Strike, Dragon Ball.
If you're wearing a kimono, it is easier to sun your genitals. Am I right?
Very true. Okay. Very true. You can disrobe very easily.
It's all connected.
It's all connected, and that's why today we're going to talk about some dark things. Uh-oh. We're going to talk about depression, and we're going to talk about vampires. And we're talking about homeschooling, which isn't dark, but that's different.
So, I mean, I think this is timely because we're now in pretty much nationwide stay-at-home order.
Yeah.
So there are probably some depressed people stuck in their apartments or homes, wondering what to do with their time, worried about their bills. I bet there's a lot of depression issues right now.
Well, I would distinguish depression from just the general worries. But there's a lot of depressed people.
Yeah.
And I think I have come to some understanding of what causes it.
Okay.
Because I've been depressed before. I've gone through the whole depression cycle.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And it's I would say depression occurs. And the thing about it, as we've said before, everything's fractal.
Mm-hmm.
And so this saying, what I'm going to say applies to your psyche, society, and the world at the same time.
Okay.
And I'm going to simultaneously explain why people get depressed, one of the major functions of religion, and why the world is in chaos. Because they're all the same.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Okay. So I want you to imagine this cycle. And I need a PowerPoint here, but I'm going to PowerPoint just into your heads.
Okay.
Just PowerPoint projection. TM patented.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So you've got imagine this circle. All right. And at the top of the circle, we're going to have the words New World.
Mm-hmm.
Then we go to let's say 3 o'clock. Well, a clock is better because you know what a clock is. 12 o'clock, New World. 3 o'clock, we'll call it mythological conflict.
Mm-hmm.
Then we'll go with, I'm sorry, that's it. Right. New World, 12 o'clock. And then it may be 1:30, mythological conflict. 3 o'clock, myth disintegration. 4:30, narrative abandonment and liberation.
Mm-hmm.
6 o'clock, bottom, chaos, alienation and atomization.
Mm-hmm.
7:50, we get the war in heaven, which is where we are now. That's You Are Here.
Okay.
9 o'clock, myth formation, and then 10:30, world building, and then you're back to the top, New World. And this happens over and over again. So I'll explain it on society level first, and then we'll go to the world and to the individual.
Okay.
All right, so the New World, when you start at the top, that's when you've got your belief system, and it's working.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Mm-hmm. Whatever it is. It could be Christianity. Could be some shamanism.
Mm-hmm.
It could be you're a Shinto Buddhist. Whatever it is, it's working for you, right? Everything's going well. Everyone in the society knows their place. They have a place,
mm-hmm.
and they're reasonably taken care of and secure. And there's not just a whole lot of problems with it, right?
Okay.
Like the Egyptian Empire went for like 5,000 years.
Right.
On whatever their crazy system was. They had the Ra every morning. You get up, you say, "Hi, Ra." You go worship the Pharaoh. It was working.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but then so then the time starts to move on. And you get to the 1:30 phase, which was I called the mythological inconsistencies and conflict phase. This is where so at 12 o'clock at the New World, there's some things that don't fit into your worldview,
mm-hmm.
but not overly many, and you can dismiss them and say, "Oh, we just don't have enough data yet," or whatever.
Okay,
right. But over time, all these things start to creep in, which make problems.
Mm-hmm.
And in the West, that would be I think one of the first things that caused the fall of Christendom was the plague, because lots of people were dying. And there was a great crisis of faith because nobody's prayers were seeming to do very much.
Sure.
Right. And the church hierarchy, I don't think you can separate the plague from the Reformation, because the people were looking around and going, well, look, you claim to be the successors of the apostles, right?
Right.
But yet somehow you don't have the healing powers of the apostles. Mm-hmm. Peter could have done something. Why can't you do something? Mm-hmm. That was a general sentiment floating around, right? Mm-hmm. And it didn't do anything. Nothing happened. So then you get to and then on top of that you have Copernicus, you have Galileo, and they're like, hey, maybe this cosmos doesn't work how we think it does.
Yep.
Right. Then you have the birth of what we would call like real science, and people are starting to be like, I don't know, maybe there's some other explanations for these things going on. Mm-hmm. So all these inconsistencies in your worldview, which the Christendom worldview was complete. It had a place for everything. Everyone was in its place. Mm-hmm. But these inconsistencies begin to pile up. And that's when you enter into the next phase. And when you're in this mythological inconsistencies phase, you can tell because you're in the midst of a lot of censorship. A lot of books being banned, because you want to the problems have built up and you can't handle them. Mm-hmm. So then you want to have a Spanish Inquisition to just push them away. Yeah. Happens every time. Okay. But you can't do that forever. And eventually they pile up and you get to 3 o'clock myth disintegration into narrative. So the myth, the over, and I don't use myth to mean not true. I just mean overarching larger than life story.
Okay. Right? Gotcha.
So that begins to disintegrate into just a narrative. And that's just a story. No one really believes it anymore, but the institutions, the society, the customs are still running on that engine. Okay. Right? Still going along. Then you get down to fourth. Then fourth. This would be our boomer moment in America recently. At 4:30, you got their narrative abandonment and liberation. So you say, well, our institutions are running this way. None of us really believe it. Let's just stop it. Change all the institutions. Everyone be free. Liberation. Woo! Okay. Sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
Okay. So there's your hippie movement.
Your hippie age, right? Or the French Revolution was also this.
Yeah. Okay.
Right? This happens over and over again in history. No one really believes the institutions anymore, yet they're set up like the old ways. It's finally time for us to tear them down, slit the throats, raise the black flag. Let's all just be free. Mm-hmm. And the thing about it is, it does give you liberation for a time, because these inconsistencies in the worldview have started to pile up. You can't make sense of them, and then you're living in this cognitive dissonance world where you're still trying to behave one way but not really believing it.
Right.
Right, and that makes a lot of problems for your psyche. And so it does feel freeing for a little bit, but then comes 6 o'clock. See, so you're free for a while. The boomers, the hippie love, all that's fine for like a little while, But then you go down, and then you're into where chaos and alienation, atomization. Yeah. Right. So your worldview that hold everything together, you've sloughed off, but now you're down in the pits. Right. And now there's no reason to do anything. And this is when things begin to be interpreted as not mattering. Like we hit this peak not too long ago in my lifetime when the dominant narrative in culture was everything's an accident. The universe has no meaning. It doesn't care about you. There is no right or wrong. It's a personal and societal malaise. Right. Right. Because there's no story anymore. The story has vanished. Right. And that's what this all is about. It's we run our lives, we run our societies, we run our world on stories. And when the stories stop functioning, you go, this is the cycle. This is the cycle of your story ceasing to function, and then you're rebuilding it. All right, next, here's where we are now in society. The war in heaven. Okay, so we got 6 o'clock chaos. At 7:30, we've got the war in heaven. So this is where, when you're in the chaos, a lot of different gods start to bubble up, right? And these gods, you may think of them as actual gods, and sometimes they are, or sometimes they're just ideologies. Right, like the rebirth of modern paganism is one of these things bubbling up in the chaos period. Okay, the sort of Gaia climate religion, which is like we have to do the climate. It's just Mother Earth worship. Okay. Yep. Egalitarianism, equality religion coming up. You've got all these new, divine feminine and feminism. Okay. Earth, Mother Goddess. All these things are popping up, right? Boom, 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 boom. At the same time, other things like libertarianism and these they're bubbling up in the chaos, and they're at war with each other. They're not consistent together. Right. So they have to fight. Yep. Okay. Now this is it's not so bad. It's not bad just because they have to fight. It's because different portions of the population will take up these different gods, these different ideologies at different times, and they will, because they were in chaos before, they will instantly attach to them like a baby goose that sees someone for the first time and imprints on it.
Yeah.
And they're terrified of falling back into chaos. Because this story may not be great, like this feminism story or this critical theory story that interprets everything in the lens of race and stuff, right?
Yeah.
It may not be a fantastic story, but it is a story.
It's at least something to make sense of the madness.
Right. And they don't, and the most terrifying thing for these people is to fall back into chaos.
Right.
And so they will fight tooth and nail to not do it. So anything that's why this conflict arises. And you're like, well, I don't think your story is good. And like, that's where that comes from. Because you don't want to fall back down into the chaos, right? Mm-hmm. That is the worst thing that could happen. And that's this war in heaven happens now, because if you, I like say you're a feminist, someone comes along and is like, well, actually, no, we need to be worshiping the earth more, and you're doing your feminism thing is really in conflict here. And then you get reeing on each side, right? Yeah. People screaming at the sky.
Yeah.
Then you get Antifa, you get all these things, right? But eventually society goes through that. And this is where this happened over and over again in antiquity. And this is where these gods seem to merge in these myths, because some of these different gods and ideologies will be destroyed during the war in heaven, but some of them will come to an alliance and they'll be merged together.
Okay.
And this happened, one of the greatest. So the last cycle this happened was World War I, right? Because the previous story, the previous narrative of monarchy and the hierarchy fell apart. And then you had three dominant things that rose up to fight, to claim position, three dominant gods: fascism, communism, and liberalism. Okay. And along with some other things, communism and capitalism and stuff, and in that fight, the ascendant gods were, in the West anyway, liberalism and capitalism, and they got merged. Even though there's no real reason for them to be, in hindsight. But just because those two were the most popular, they merged them together into like one goddess that was half dragon head and half raven claw or whatever. Not to be Harry Potter. Harry Potter and the collapse of the petrodollar. But anyway, so that's called the myth formation phase. We're at 9 o'clock, myth formation. Okay. So you've taken whoever was the victors in the war on heaven, you put them together, and they begin to coalesce into a story. Then at 11:30, we have the world building phase. This is when everything else, all facts, history, science, society, religion, gets interpreted in light of that new narrative. Like, for instance, after World War II, with the final ascent of liberalism over these other things, now everything is interpreted in history as a rise out of the darkness of ignorance into the light of liberalism in 1960. Okay. Basically, right? Mm-hmm. Everything that came before it was stupid and wrong. Yeah. And World War II is our founding mythology. Mm-hmm. Everything that came before World War II is inconsequential. It was just ignorance, and we put that to bed. That's why everyone that disagrees must be cast in the light of being a Nazi, because that's the narrative. Right? That's the mythology. And so
if you're not a liberal, you're a Nazi. Okay.
The mythology has as its bad guy the Nazi, because liberalism, communism and liberalism and communism teamed up to beat fascism. Right. Right. And so that they're the first bad guy. And though, yes, we'll turn our guns on communism later, but that's the original bad guy. That's the snake in the garden. Mm-hmm. And so everyone that's against us must be transformed into that, because that's how the mythology functions. Right. But now that's beginning to break down again, right? And so then you move to 12 o'clock, then you're in a new world. You have a stable society again for a time, right? Mm-hmm. So these inconsistencies begin to pile up, and then you go through the cycle again. And we've been just round and round on this for like hundreds of years now. Just going round and round this cycle. And every time the wars in heaven phase, it almost always translates to a real war. Mm-hmm. Right? And that's why the world is crazy right now and why people can't be reasoned with, because it's this fear of falling back into chaos. It's trying to make sense of the world. And this is why you fall into chaos. This is where your depression comes from, too, because you have your worldview and belief, right? It begins to not work for you for various reasons. You fall into chaos and alienation, and then you're very susceptible to every single new idea that comes along. Mm-hmm. Right? Which can be, I mean, it can be good and bad in the long run. You know, you can, in the chaos and alienation phase, you're really open to change. So if your previous thing was bad, you can discover something good, but you can also discover something horrible. Yeah,
it's hard on the psyche to have all these different narratives thrown at you and have to negotiate them and not sure what's true and what fits and what works and what doesn't.
Yeah, it can be horrible. I've become an expert at it. I've been around this circle like 1,000 times. Just round and around this clock. You know, in my worst stage of depression was probably like 3 years long. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I was the standard suicidal and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And then in hindsight, it's like, well, what's going on? It's like, well, I could never form a story around my life. Mm-hmm. Right. And this is the main purpose of the religions, is that because your imagination is bigger than your life. Right. We live, you know, like, you know, and I live in the van, I drive around, I go to Slab City, I peel data off the SETI satellites when they're not looking, all this stuff, right? Hunt for Sasquatch. But still, my imagination is like, and the yearning of my spirit is for like these overwhelming divine cosmic things, right? And your own life can never feel that on its own, right? So what you'd have is the religion provides you a story wherein you can live into a larger myth. And that's why you have to be able to LARP your religion.
Right.
You have to be able to live action role play it. That's why the Muslims dress like Muhammad and the Jews try to dress like Moses, right? That's why you have to be able to see yourself as a father, as like an image of the divine father.
Yeah.
Right. You always have to live. You have to be able to live into your religion, because that gives you a narrative that you can then live into. Right. Your whole life, and that can ground you. And that's why all the religions fight, because to give up your religion means your narrative collapses that you've interpreted your whole life around, and you fall into the chaos and alienation, and who knows what'll come out of that.
Right.
Right. That's why it's so difficult. That's why conversions are very rare. That's why they don't happen very often in history. They happen only at specific points when the narratives have completely broken down. Like the paganism narrative in ancient Rome broke down, and that opened the way for Christianity. But if it had happened at a different point, it wouldn't have taken off. That's why it didn't take off very well in China at the time, because their native religions were still holding their society together.
Right.
You know, so this is sort of like how you like. There was a fella on the internet the other day, and he was talking about, you know, we in the dissident circles. I like to say it like that, dissident circles. We've been coming up with it. We've been having a lot of ideas for a while. We've been forming communities, all this stuff. But he was like, no one's outlined a way to actually change the culture and be victorious.
Yeah.
And then what I'm trying to tell you is, this is how you do it. The one that wins is the one that has the best story, which is what an evangelist is, by the way. Evangelist is someone that is a storyteller, right? The one that how you build the new world in the world building phase is your narrative has to win. Your mythology you have to be the best storyteller, which is why this podcast exists, because we're trying to tell people how to integrate all these things together, right?
Well, it's interesting. It makes me think on, you know, kind of on the rightosphere right now. Yeah. There's this meme material that's all about, you know, starting a family and living in connection, you know, with the created order, and you know, rejecting the internet lifestyle and pornography and pop culture and focusing on virtue and tradition and all that stuff, and you can really build a life story. It's not a cosmic story, but if you, right. I think there's a desire to see the lasting cosmic value in growing a family.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Well, that's why memes have become the war ground.
Yeah,
because memes are elements of a larger story, right? And so when you're out memeing, when you guys are out doing your dank memes, you are you're being an evangelist basically for a type of worldview.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the war on heaven. This is why they want to ban the memes, and why you have to keep memeing all the time.
Yep.
And why meme warfare is actually very potent, and they're more afraid of that than they are of any like sort of dummy who's like come take them from my cold dead hands, right? And I support those guys, of course.
Yeah.
But that's not how we win the fight, right? You win the fight by showing people a better way,
mm-hmm.
and showing the inconsistencies of the current way.
Yeah.
Right. And that's why the meme warfare was such a thing, especially in 2016. If any of you were fellow meme veterans, and I'm sure you were, that's why it became this whole internet censorship thing, and that's why because that's actually doing damage.
Yeah.
And like real substantive damage.
Yep.
And so it does because
the NPC meme, dude, that was a nuclear bomb. Totally neutered the entire cultural projection influence of the media, the mainstream media, quote unquote, just totally sawed their junk off there with that one NPC meme with the little gray guy.
Yes. That's one of the ways they've tried to fool you is, and they say like, oh, they're basement dwellers just making they try to denigrate what you're doing.
Yeah.
First of all, it's okay to live in a basement.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay to live in a van.
I mean, I live in a bunker.
Yeah. So don't fall for that trap, right?
Yep.
You out there, you may be a loser, but it's okay. That's our message.
Yeah.
But no, don't, because what they're trying to do is they're trying to goad you into not doing it and think it's bad.
Yeah.
Right? Or like it's shameful.
Mm-hmm.
And then B, they try to be like, oh, the coward's hiding behind, they try to goad you into face doxing yourself and revealing your identity.
Yeah.
Don't do that, because look, anonymity is free speech.
Mm-hmm.
That's a meme that's been going around. It's like, that's true. And because like, if you reveal who you are, they can come attack you.
Yeah.
So don't fall for they're just all they're trying to do is get you to stop firing meme bullets.
Yeah.
Which are real.
When those things carry that weight of truth in them, that is immediately apprehended by the mind, which is why memes take off. That's why the NPC meme did so well, is because it was loaded with truth value that the mind of the receiver instantly recognized. And it didn't require anybody to lose their anonymity over it.
Right. But this is, so you have to rebuild the mythology in order to change the culture. And that's why, so that's one of the reasons we started this show, Maps and the Society, because it's like, well, we had a lot of inconsistencies that did pile up.
Mm-hmm.
And the new atheist movement capitalized on those.
Yep.
Right? And so we're trying to say like, well, actually, no, here's the answer to those inconsistencies, right? Here's the problems in your worldview, the scientific one, where, and there's a lot of them.
Oh yeah.
And here's how we rebuild the world. We're gonna remake the world. Or remake the world. That's what this podcast is ultimately about. Remaking
I love it.
The world.
It's good to have podcast goals.
Yeah, remaking the world with one trucker at a time.
Yeah.
One squad car, one meme.
Yeah, speaking of truckers, shout out to my truckers who are refusing loads going into New York City. Would do the same. What
is, I saw pictures of people standing in line at the hospital.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
No, don't.
If you didn't have the virus already, you're going to get it there.
Yeah.
Just stay home unless you're like on death's door.
This is people worship the lab. This is lab coat worship. They're like, oh no, right. I'm having fear. I better go genuflect before the lab coat. So I'm going to get in line at the temple and wait in line to see the priest of the lab coat so that he can bless me. And this will allay my fear. That's what's going on. That's why somebody with the sniffles would go stand in line with a bunch of other sick people during a pandemic of a horrible virus. That's the only thing. It's a religious reaction to go genuflect before the lab coat. I mean, if you got your pulse oximeter at home and you're pulling some bad numbers, you're like, oh, my lungs are filling up with junk. I better go see somebody. That's one thing. Right, but that's not everybody that's getting in line. They want the lab goat to tell them that it's going to be okay and to bless them. Yeah, not everybody. A lot of people.
As someone that's had pneumonia before, I don't want to be responsible for people dying.
Yeah.
But maybe I will be. But I'm not. but look, you don't, even if your lungs are filling up a little bit, if it's not too bad, you can stay home. You'll get better.
Yeah.
Right?
No, I mean, people have recovered from pneumonia before. Yeah.
Yeah, I've recovered from pneumonia before.
Right.
Right? It's not just because you don't be scared by the pneumonia hysteria.
Right.
Because pneumonia is very upsetting.
Mm-hmm.
Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But I think that if you go in and get intubated, you're going to almost always be worse.
I mean, intubation is a pretty hardcore and dangerous procedure in and of itself. Yeah.
I think unless you are almost certainly going to die, you don't want to seek that.
Yeah.
You want to try to tough it out because you're going to end up worse in the end, and you might not get off those things.
Yeah, well, it's the numbers for people that get put on a vent, it's not good.
Everything about this crisis is just crazy. It's like it's real, but it's also hysteria.
Yeah.
Like, you don't need to go stand in line for 7 hours with other sick people if you just are moderately...
If you can stand for 7 hours, you're well enough to be at home.
Yeah, you should be at home. If you can stand in line for 7 hours, go home because you're certainly going to get whatever it is there worse, right?
Yeah.
And
not to mention all the nasty bacteria flying around hospitals that you're not going to encounter in your home.
No.
That if your lungs are already compromised and then you get some Staphylococcus aureus or whatever, or something else in there, dude, then you're in big trouble.
And then there's this thing about testing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we gotta test. It's another religious ritual. You're right, because what are you gonna do?
Yeah.
You can't do anything if they test positive. You just say, well, you're positive.
Well, that might be changing. I do at some point we need to talk about the politics of the COVID treatment movement.
Oh, that was ridiculous. They banned the malaria drugs.
Oh man. So,
just because Orange Man said so. Well, it was ridiculous.
And chloroquine, I don't know about hydroxychloroquine. I was trying to figure that out this morning, but chloroquine itself, which is also effective, just not quite as potent, you got to take a little bit more of it. I'm pretty sure is off patent and in generic form, which means it can be made by anybody. Okay.
Yeah.
It can be made very cheaply, right? Mm-hmm. And that might, I'm still trying to figure out if that's true of hydroxychloroquine, which apparently works a little bit better from what I've read, but both of them are seemingly effective. But nobody's going to get ridiculously wealthy if one of those or both become part of the standard treatment protocol. Because right now it's like some kind of chloroquine, vitamin C, zinc, and albuterol, as needed.
No giant expensive drug.
Yeah, and all those things are not super expensive, and the government can afford to buy a bunch of them and distribute them and stop this thing, right? But then you've got governors like the guy in freaking Nevada, banning the treatment with chloroquine. For what reason, I don't know. We're
not even sure if it works or not yet.
The Surgeon 100%. General of Nevada is not even licensed to practice medicine. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, Nevada's got issues. They've got problems. That place is screwed up. But But I mean, why would you why not just let the doctor decide? And there's plenty of doctors out there that are publishing stuff. I mean, it's not peer reviewed, whatever. We don't have time for that anyway. But there are plenty of people that are like, yeah, I treated 350 patients or whatever with this stuff, and I saw really good results. And they're sharing this information with each other. They're getting on. I've been on like medical message boards, reading what ER docs are telling each other. Basically saying, okay, I've treated this many hundred patients already. Here's what I figured out works. Here's what I figured out doesn't work. Don't do this. This makes it worse. Right. And all that information is just flying around on these message boards. Yeah. Accessible to everybody, right? Useful information from the front lines. And Trump's up there like, hey, we need to work on this. This stuff appears to work. We're going to take a shot at this, especially because it's cheap. I mean, if we can spend $2 trillion bailing out everything under the sun, we can throw a couple $100 million at buying hundreds of thousands of chloroquine tablets, and let's just make them available in case they do work. Even if they don't work, if we discover, these don't work, it was worth it. Right. It was worth taking the shot. And
or you can just drink your fish tank.
Yeah,
but fine.
No, don't drink the fish tank chemicals.
Your aquarium product.
That wasn't even the same drug. That was chloroquine phosphate. And the stuff
it's gonna be. I'm just saying, regardless of what happened, you all need to drink whatever you put in your aquarium tank. You need to drink it, and that will heal you.
Don't do it. Don't do it. I hope you people know better than to listen to Sumo at this point when he says something like that. Because if you don't, I can't help you at this point. See, you totally derailed my point. I don't even know what I was saying anymore. Sumo.
I'm sorry.
No.
It is. Yeah, it's all related. It's all related because that people have built up their narrative. This is why you can't, even when things are proven to be a hoax. Yeah, people don't go back on it. This is one thing I've learned. Look, just because you get proven right later doesn't mean the bad opinion people formed of you goes away.
Oh, that's true. Admit that you were. Bill Mitchell. Bill Mitchell.
So they're like,
no, I know. Wait. I know what I was going to say. The other side of this war here with the drugs, there are some very powerful pharmaceutical companies that are trying to push antiviral drugs that are still on patent and that cost a fortune. And they're like, no, this will work. Try this, test this, test our drug. And there's not as much data on that drug as far as its efficacy in this. There's a lot more with the chloroquine that I've been able to find anyway. I'm just speaking anecdotally here. But
we are medical doctors.
But nobody's going to get filthy freaking rich off the chloroquines. That's my point. Yeah. And so you need to follow the money when you hear people arguing about treatment protocols for this stuff. You need to follow the damn money because these pharmaceutical companies are ruthless. Absolutely ruthless.
And people join in on these things because we're in the war on heaven phase and no one wants to fall back down into chaos. They've already picked their pony.
Oh yeah.
They've already picked their pony and they're like, well, this is the one I'm going to the wall for.
Yeah.
And so even if what I'm doing is completely deranged, I don't want to fall back down.
It's funny because you've got leftists taking the side of the giant global mega pharmaceutical corporation because it's the opposite of what Trump wants to do. Yeah. I mean, that's how deranged this situation is right now. It's made some strange bedfellows.
And listen, I don't totally blame them. I mean, it is ridiculous, but I just do the opposite of whatever Bill Mitchell wants. So I understand it. I mean, I get it, and I don't even dislike Bill Mitchell. I just do it because.
Yeah, it just seems like a good. When all the rubrics are busted, you just got to come up with something simple to get you through the day.
Yeah, just like what's he saying? Okay, I'm doing the opposite.
Right,
and that just gives you something to do. Again, it gives you a story to work with.
There you go. That's your celestial story right now is the opposite of Bill Mitchell.
It's like whatever he says, the opposite. And then you can do you have a goal to work for the day.
Yeah.
Hey, there is a bit of me that's just the opposite. Mm-hmm. It's just the opposite. Like I was telling people about the COVID stuff in January.
Yep.
But now that it's so popular and so many people are freaking out about it, I sort of want to be like, it's a hoax.
So that's really,
even though I know it's not.
That is super interesting. Okay, so about 45, 65, I don't know, % of the people I run with are good old normies, and I love them.
Yeah.
And they want to talk about golf and cooking and stuff. Okay, right. The rest of them are, out there in some regard, into conspiracies and all that stuff. And I think, and I'm fighting this myself with this thing, is I've got a tendency to try to live about a year in the future.
Yes.
And when a conspiracy becomes proven, then
you want to be like, no, it's wrong.
Then it becomes uninteresting to me. Okay.
Exactly.
So I was talking with a friend of mine yesterday. It's like we're all us, the weirdos. We're all trying to live in the future. Okay.
Yes.
So now that the COVID-19 thing has blown up, it's ravaging the planet. The impulse is to say, you know what? What if this is just a cover for the rollout of the technocracy?
Of the 5G.
What if they're putting up the 5G in all the schools while they're closed? And and it's like, maybe they are. I don't know. But hang on, just stop for a second, because this disease is still a problem we need to react to.
I know, but see, it's not fun anymore.
But it's not fun anymore. and so another friend of mine's like, this is a controlled demolition of the economy, right?
Yeah.
They knew the economy was coming down. This came around. It's opportunity. It's probably not even really that bad, but it gives us cover. We're gonna blow it all up. We're gonna blow up the economy, man. Yeah. That's what's really going on. It's like, no, I think there really is a disease going on. Right. You probably. It's like this same friend he's so over it. He's so over the thing that's happening now that he doesn't want to wear his PPE to work in the medical field. He's like, I don't want to wear my N95 mask. This is really about the economy. I was like, no, you should probably still, even if it is, say it is a controlled demolition of the economy going on at the same time. I don't know. Maybe it's possible to me that that's also happening. Right. But you still need to wear your N95 mask when you're seeing patients.
Well, I think, again, that's why I say you need to be aware of this cycle, because you're in it all the time, whether you want to be or not. And so when you're in our world, part of my world is always figuring out what's really going on, right?
Yeah.
And so then that's my story. That's my mythology I live in.
Yeah.
But then when what's really going on is also concurrent with what's actually popular.
Yeah.
Then I want to be like, bah, no. But see, I'm self-aware enough to realize that's what I'm doing.
Yeah, so we
Some
out
of you
here,
guys got to chill out.
Yeah, we fringe dwellers, we need to remember that, yes, we all know that there are nefarious forces that will use literally any national emergency to pursue their ends of banking dominance, of 5G cancer antennas on every house, whatever. Pick your thing. Somebody is, in reality, going to try to use this for that purpose. That doesn't make the disease not real.
Right.
And it doesn't make it something that you can just ignore because you're focused on the other thing.
Right.
Okay?
Right. Even if it's now become fun to be like, nah, it's not.
Yeah, it's not. That's right. The disease is not fun. Now that it's actually happening, it's not fun. These things are only fun in the future.
Yeah, it's only fun if you try to predict the future and be right. That's right. What it's you try to figure out what's really going on.
So now that people are actually dying, all the fun is gone, and there's actually real fear. There's not like future fear that's kind of exciting. There's real fear that is not fun. Right. And so you have to. Who's the guy that wrote Heart of Darkness? Conrad.
Yeah.
You got to go through it. You have to face it. That's like the only way through is to face it.
It's like the difference in fear between when you're on a roller coaster and when you're on a roller coaster that breaks suddenly.
Yeah. There's two different kinds of fear.
It's like the first one, you're like, oh, it's a little scary. Ooh, and then it's like, oh, man. Right?
Yeah.
Different. You swapped over to a different thing.
Right. But you still got to face it.
You still got to face it, and you got to homeschool in spite of it.
Don't use, there's a very healthy conspiratorial bent that is good and useful, but don't use it as a crutch. You still gotta face stuff.
Or you know what? I want a small percentage of you to continue using it as a crutch though, because it's hilarious.
Well, they're out there doing good work. They're doing important work.
Great work.
I love the conspiracy crowd. They do the best work on the internet. Okay, and they discover real and good and important things.
My friend who's a Malaysian, this whole time he's just been like, I love it. He's been like, this is all fake. None of it is fake. It's fake. all of it. I love that guy.
I got friends that go back and forth. Yeah.
Someone that can stare at just something that's happening right in front of them being like fake.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. No. My friends are going back and forth. As we're recording this show, I have people texting me. I've got several friends that I've been, talking to a lot about this stuff. And they swap places on their positions. So one day, one guy will be like, "This is fake," and the other guy will be like, "This is real. This is a disaster, and there's really nothing we can do except try to survive it." And then by the next day, they've swapped.
Yeah,
because we're all trying to, and I get it. We're all trying to cope. Yeah, we're all trying to cope with it. So we're gonna talk about some coping mechanisms today. We're gonna get practical today.
Yeah,
Because how many of you guys have your kids at home right now and are not used to that?
All my kids are in the van.
They're being so nice and quiet while we're recording.
I have the door, the wall behind the.
I didn't even know that they were there. That's great.
Yeah, they're all. Well, what you do? Van tip.
Okay.
You need to build out when you do your van build. You need to build out a small partition wall between the front two seats and the back.
Oh yeah.
Very good. That way you can drive while everyone's asleep.
Mm-hmm. Insulated,
all of it.
Soundproof.
You can refrigerate the back.
It's like, it reminds me of the Homer from The Simpsons, car. With each individual, everybody had their own sound bubble. They couldn't talk to each other.
Yeah.
There's something there. There's something there. But no, today I want to spend a little time talking about homeschooling because pretty much every parent in this country right now has found themselves to be a homeschool family. And
it's great.
And so I want to say, welcome to my world, Grandma, because we're all going to do this together here, and it's okay.
It's like the virus. The virus was a homeschool parent.
Yeah, it made us all homeschool parents, at least temporarily. So there's a few things that people scrambling and trying to figure out how to homeschool their kids, whether or not you have video services. Some schools are providing material, and some are not doing so good. But either way, it's got to be executed at home, and the parents are now having to be massively involved.
Right.
And so I think there's one thing that you all need to understand. It's that even the most skilled and dedicated and well-suited homeschool mom is periodically and frequently driven insane by her children.
Yeah.
I mean,
people skill song.
I mean, clinically.
I feel like I need it.
Okay.
What you say you do here? I have people skills.
We have people skills.
And what could be more of a people skill than educating your own children? I don't know what. I mean, talk about taking it back from the machine. Because institutional, I'm not going to go on a giant screed about homeschooling, but I'm going to go on a small one. Maybe you've already picked up on the fact that my family homeschools and we love it. But institutional schooling is a new thing. Okay.
Right.
That before that it was your parents would teach you, or you'd get into an apprenticeship or whatever. There were a bazillion different ways to get an education. And only sort of the elite went to formal institutional schools. And they did it when they were older. I mean, there were boarding schools and things, but people had a nanny and a governess and all that stuff if you were an aristocrat. But, education is just, it was built into family life, okay? And then the Industrial Revolution came and said, hey,
you got blue jeans and you had to go to school.
Yeah, see, they happened at the same time.
Out with the kimonos, in with the blue jeans, take the kids away. Same energy.
Yep, and so we said, okay, we're going to get the government to educate the children so we can both work. And now here we have the atomization of society and all the other woes. But I don't want to talk about that. I want to talk about practical stuff.
Okay.
And so if all you guys are sitting around wondering what am I going to do, and especially if you're looking at the material coming from your institutional school that they're giving you to do at home, and you're not very impressed with it, you need to look into classical education. Okay. Woo. So it may be Andrew Kern of the Circe Institute that gave me this definition. I'm not sure. But the goal of classical education is to train the affection toward the good, the true, and the beautiful. Those are the goals. Those are the things. So beside, as a fundamental layer underneath, computer skills or, history or your abilities as a writer or your ability to be an accountant or whatever, there's a deeper, more human need for people to have their affections trained to recognize and love what is good, what is beautiful, and what is true. And those things, and we've talked about that before, they're all really the same thing. Mm-hmm. Like, if you find something that's beautiful and good, it's also true. Right. And pick your combination. And so there is a system of education that has been around a long time that focuses on that as its fundamental layer upon which all else is built. And there are a lot of modern iterations of that floating around, especially, where I live in, a kind of a tier 2 growing major city. Homeschooling has exploded. Right. And so there's a lot of resources out there. It's not for the weirdo shut-in family anymore.
It is still for them too.
Yeah, there are a few of those still. But now, at least here, they've been vastly outnumbered by these co-ops, groups of families all working together. The format we use in my family is my kids at their age go to classes once a week, and then that is aligned with the material that we're doing at home throughout the rest of the week. And so they get classroom time, they get, some specialization. They have certain teachers that specialize in certain things, all that good stuff. But then we also get to do stuff at home. And so my little kids are reading like Shakespeare. My wife is reading them through Shakespeare. It's like it's a sort of an abridged kid version, but uses the language and the quotes the original works and all that kind of stuff. And we're talking, first grade. Okay. And the amount of the resources out there are fantastic. So if you were and getting into homeschool is a little bit like getting into 9/11 Truth, is that you start searching.
Isn't everything like getting into 9/11 Truth?
But you'll end up, there's a million different roads to go down. So instead of taking you through all of it, I want to just introduce the idea of classical education to those that have never heard it. And I've talked about what it's really about, and it's very focused on Western. Like the Western educational tradition, I guess you would call it. Right. And it's focused on a lot of reading, classical art, aesthetics, sort of the very basics of a traditional liberal arts education.
Right. It's like Confucianism, but for Western people.
Yeah, there you go. It's all very about simple fundamentals, and it's cheap. It's cheap and simple to execute. The material produces a well-trained and effective mind in a person. So I get a lot of this information from the CIRCE Institute. They're based in North Carolina, CIRCE Institute. They are a classical education both for institutional and homeschooling. Tons of resources, great podcasts, great articles, books. They have an apprenticeship program. They're a great place to say, okay, how do I find out about educating my kids? I'm interested in the classical model. CIRCE Institute is a great place to start. And in their little what is classical education, they break it down 3 ways. They say classical educators have a high view of humanity, right? Man is the image bearer of God kind of thing. Right. They are logocentric, and they believe that the world makes sense and that the sense it makes is knowable. Okay. So that's focusing on objective forms of literature and art and thinking. It's not a lot. It's not a relativistic sort of thought process. And then third, they're focused on the Western tradition. So classical Western art, Greek and Roman and Renaissance and Middle Ages and all that kind of stuff, like the Western tradition. They're really into that. So that's the kind of material that you're going to be spending most of your time with, and that material is so rich that it yields all sorts of good stuff.
Is there a lot of Kipling recitals?
Yeah, their poetry generally is huge, and so Kipling, Chesterton. These are some names.
Browning, maybe.
Yeah, sometimes.
Sometimes
these are some. Browning. He's good. He's good. Yeah. So, but focusing on those things does so much for the. I got to stop just philosophizing. I want to get to the guts of it. So check out CIRCE Institute. Check out Charlotte Mason is sort of a method of schooling, a philosophy of a subset of classical education. You can look up Charlotte Mason. Now, as far as getting involved with a group, one of the most broadly scattered and accessible groups is called Classical Conversations. These are, usually meet once or twice a week in people's homes, and the parents, pick a specialty and they get together and then they break for the week, and it's very cool. And so you get a group, there's support networks, there's all sorts of stuff that you can very quickly get plugged into once you know what to look for. And so Classical Conversations is great for getting involved with what's called a co-op, which is a bunch of families working together to educate their kids based around a similar philosophy of education. And then resources like the Searcy Institute are fantastic, just getting the philosophy behind it in the guts and finding good resources and learning yourself how to be an educator, because we're all doing this now. So I'll post some links on the show notes at mapsoc.org. The notes for the show will have a whole bunch of homeschooling resources attached to it, but you can do it. And it's okay if your children frustrate you. It doesn't mean you're a bad parent or a bad teacher. It just means that raising kids is sometimes like being pecked to death by a duck. And it's okay. It's okay. It's okay.
This makes me think, you said, was it Searcy Institute?
Searcy.
Yes. It makes me think that we need a MAPS Institute where we have our own homeschooling program.
The MAPS homeschool co-ops where they go on Bigfoot field trips.
Bigfoot field trips, a lot of nude exercising.
I don't think that's a good idea. I don't think we need
we encourage kids to do it on their own, basically, not in groups.
I think that's still weird. I don't think anybody should be nude until they're 21 years old.
But, I spent most of my childhood nude. I don't know about.
I mean, yeah, I guess I did too.
See,
yeah,
it's very healthy. In Greece,
I guess I'm just a
Greece,
prude.
You go to the beach and all the children are nude.
Yeah,
it's a bit weird, but also all the adults are nude. Everyone's nude.
I think that is weird. I don't think that's a classical Western thing that we need to propagate.
But the Bigfoot, definitely.
Modesty is important. Modesty allows for the intermediation of our relationships.
Well, that's why
layers of intimacy.
That's why you work out in your bathroom,
right?
Because the walls are your clothing.
Yeah, I know about your spiritual ritual of working out.
The walls are your clothing.
The walls are your clothing.
Because no one can see it. No one can see you, right?
I guess so. Okay.
Your house is like your clothing also, or your van.
Or your van.
And the MAPS Institute will have Bigfoot outings.
Do you drive in the nude?
No. Well, I don't drive shirtless, but I do drive pantless.
Oh, that's weird.
Well, we all have our own stories to live,
I guess so.
Mm-hmm. Why are you shielding your eyes? Is the sun coming right in on top of you?
The sun's coming right in my window. I'm just going to jump up and pull the blinds down because it's killing me. It's killing me. There we go. My bunker faces the morning sun.
Yeah. We do that, for the cloning, you need a lot of vitamin
through the 6 feet of glass, my one porthole window, the sun just beams in like a laser. And it's usually focused on my genitals, for the hormonal benefits.
See,
but
that's why you drive pantless, because you leave the sunroof open.
Oh,
You're getting it the whole time.
Well, that's not a bad idea.
I'm telling you, this is a lot of trucker tips here.
Trucker tips.
Cool.
All right.
I encourage all of them to do it.
We got one more topic for this show, and there's zero segue. It's impossible to segue.
Let's come up with one. Homeschooling. Your children can feel like they're sucking your blood.
It can at times. They're sucking the life right out of you. Yeah, like a vampire.
Because that's what we're going to talk about today, is vampires. Do I have a spooky music?
I guess I do. Hang on. How's that?
That was good. That was good. So I wanted to talk about vampires. Somebody asked me about vampires, and I was like, I don't know if I want to talk about vampires, because the problem with vampires is they're both fake, but also super real.
That's weird.
And so threading that needle is difficult. Is because there's a very, very real vampire. There's like look. I don't want to scare you guys.
Okay.
Have you seen the movie Blade?
Yeah. Wesley Snipes?
Yeah.
Yeah.
With like the vampires that run high-tech industries and stuff?
Uh-huh.
It's all real.
I've suspected.
I don't want to scare you guys, but it's basically real.
Okay.
Right? I don't think they can move at super speeds and no kung fu.
But they are drinking blood? Well, Peter Thiel had that thing go. What was that thing, Ambrosia, that Peter Thiel is involved with?
Yeah.
And it's basically vampirism for medical benefits. I mean,
look, I'm gonna go through. I'm gonna talk about Ambrosia, the company Ambrosia.
Oh, good, good.
Which does. I mean, you look at the company Ambrosia, and it's like Blade the movie when you walk into the Vampires Corporation and everything's nice and sleek and modern and clean, and they take you to the back room and they just drink blood. It's the same thing.
Wow.
But I thought I would. I'm going to begin at the beginning, so we're going to go back to vampires.
Okay.
And then as I found every single time without exception when I research folklore, I find this is all based on reality.
Mm.
Every single time.
Mm.
So here's the thing about vampires. So, well, first let's do the American context. Do you know about the vampire panic of New England?
No.
No one knows history anymore. They don't teach this. This is
that's not in our classical education curriculum.
I know it needs to be. Look, in the 1800s. I think it was the very tail end of the 1700s in America through the tail end of the 1800s. So like 1790s to 1890s. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
There was the New England vampire panic, which went on and off in varying degrees of severity. And it was caused, this is the modern interpretation, I think it's basically right, by tuberculosis. Oh. Or at the time, it was called consumption, which is a much scarier name.
Yeah.
Because it does appear, a sufferer from tuberculosis appears to waste away over a period of like years.
Okay.
It's very unpleasant. Mm-hmm. And so no one knew what was causing it. Tuberculosis is caused by bacteria, right? Of which several people can be carriers, including yours truly. I'm a carrier of TB. But I'm asymptomatic.
Good for you.
Yeah, thank you. That's actually true. I somehow contracted TB as a child. Mm-hmm. Not sure how. But then they gave me some stuff, knocked it out. So now I carry the antibodies, and I always test positive on those TB tests they make you do. There you go. So I have to do the chest X-ray thing. But anyway, so they didn't know what caused it. It's a bacteria. Mm-hmm. But this was before they knew about bacteria, really, right? And so what was making everyone sort of waste away was sort of up in the air. And it was pretty bad. We're talking about pandemics. This is why it ties into modern times. Because tuberculosis was responsible for about 1/4 of the deaths in New England over about a 50-year period in the 1800s. About a quarter of the population.
Nuts.
Crazy numbers. We're talking about 1 in 4 people over let's say 1820 to 1870 died of tuberculosis in New England.
Wow. Really bad
outbreak. No one knows what's going on. No one knows what's happening. And so this gave rise in their desperation, same as the Black Plague, right? Mm-hmm. The Black Plague, the religious institutions seemed powerless to do anything, and it created a lot of openings for new belief systems, which is sort of how Protestantism came about. Mm-hmm. Similar thing going on here in that you had the rise of a kind of New England voodoo, which is why the Yankees don't talk about it very much, because this goes very much against their persona they try to project of being rational. And
New England voodoo?
Oh, man. Yeah. A New England. So what they would do, the reason it started being called consumption was because of the folk belief that was not simply folk belief. It was held by a lot of people at the time, was that somehow the dead were feasting on the living. They were consuming the living. Oh. Right? Mm-hmm. And so what began happening throughout New England, and this happened also in regular England too, but to a lesser degree, is that if you had a family member that had died of tuberculosis or consumption, and then other members of your family started to fall sick, as they often did, because that's how bacteria works, right? Mm-hmm. One of the prescribed methods of dealing with this problem would be to go disinter the body of the person that had died and inspect them to see if they looked like they had been feasting on the living.
Holy cow.
So you would look at their organs and you say, is this, if the person was sufficiently rotted, mm-hmm. say, okay, they're innocent. But if their body looked pretty well preserved, especially if it had liquid blood in it, mm-hmm. then that was evidence that they might be keeping their form existing by somehow feasting on the living. Now, it wasn't clear to me when I researched this topic and I read what they were writing about. It wasn't clear to me how they thought this was being done. Mm-hmm. Like in Europe, when vampirism first started being a thing, there's a couple people that seem to think that they actually like somehow by some kind of magic came out of the ground at night. Mm-hmm. But then how would you get back in, right? Wouldn't the ground be all upset? Like, how would you just be buried again in the morning, right?
Isn't vampires going through, is that a thing? Like they can go through walls and stuff?
Right. So it has some sort of, but like, so in some places that they did seem to write like, oh yeah, they just come out of the ground. Okay. Right. Like William of Norwich, I wrote this one down. 1136 to 1198. He wrote, this is in Europe, by the way, or not Norwich, Newburgh. Mm-hmm. He said, it would not be easy to believe that the corpses of the dead should sally, I know not by what agency, from their graves and should wander about to terrorize or to the terrorization or destruction of the living, and again return to their tomb, which of its own accord and spontaneously opens to receive them. Wild stuff, right?
So this is what people believed was going on with tuberculosis epidemic.
Well, see, I don't know. This is like
this just makes me want to make fun of New Englanders.
That's like 600 years earlier. So, but also it's a confusing thing because the word vampire was used interchangeably with the word revenant or mm-hmm. revenant, which is a French word coming from returning, mm-hmm. which seems to also be used for ghost. Okay. So there's like an overlap. It's like it's unclear how much they thought this was physically happening or how much they thought this was spiritually happening.
Gotcha.
It's very nebulous, and a lot of the peasants that partook of this didn't write down what they were thinking. So
okay,
it's hard to say.
Well, go back to disinterring the bodies. What did they do if they found a body that was not decomposing the way it should?
Well, so what you would do is the simplest method is you just flip the person over.
You flip them over. Okay.
Flip them over, rebury them, right? Mm-hmm. And that's if you had a sort of mild case. Okay. But if your cases were severe, they would remove the heart mm-hmm. and the liver. And then sometimes chop the body up. Okay. And then put it back in the ground in a different arrangement. Okay. So if you go through New England today and you look at these old graves, every once in a while, maybe about 1 in 10 mm-hmm. in some places, you'll find that the person has been like their heads at their feet and their feet are over by their hands and they're just buried all crazy, right? And then with the heart and the liver, or sometimes the intestines, you would then burn in a fire and you mix the ashes with water and make the sick people that had tuberculosis drink it. Dude. And this was thought to be maybe a curative power.
New England, what the heck?
Right. This is you can forever use this to mock Yankees.
I will.
And I'm not against Yankees, but everyone deserves mockery.
Well, my city is right now being invaded by refugees from New York trying to escape the plague, and they're going to bring it here. So I'm particularly feeling like mocking Yankees right now.
Yeah. Well, okay, so here's Dr. John Clear of New Ipswich, New Hampshire. He recorded in the Boston Medical and Surgical Volume 21 mm-hmm. at the time, in connection with these superstitions, I cannot omit to mention a circumstance which occurred here not 30 years hence. This was a disinterring of a human body which belonged to a family all strongly predisposed to consumption, for the purposes of removing the heart which was burned, the ashes of which were considered a sovereign remedy to those of the family who were still living and might be afflicted with the same disease. Right? Wow. So that was a not uncommon practice, and it was usually done by sort of lantern light in sort of a clandestine manner, because a lot of people were still sort of like they didn't want to be digging up dead bodies, really, especially family members.
Yeah,
sort of seen as uncouth, but also they were pretty desperate to try anything to get rid of the consumption, because it just would tear through families, right?
Yeah, and
so at some point they were like, well, let's try it, right? So it was this voodoo ritual. Now, it doesn't appear that most of the people doing this actually use the term vampire, but this sort of feasting on the living thing is there, right? And the term, calling it vampirism and belief in vampires tended to be a projection of the city folk writing about it onto the country people. Like, people in downtown Boston didn't often partake of this.
Okay.
So they did a little bit. But people out and about, right, would have done it. However, there is evidence that some of the townsfolk did talk about vampirism directly. And one of these, there was this, and it became so popular for a while that it stopped being sort of taboo and it became open in the public, and they would sort of be a festival. And there was, in one of the town histories, the early town histories of Manchester, Vermont, this is written here. It says, on this day, Timothy Mead officiated at the altar in the sacrifice to the demon vampire, who it was believed was still sucking the blood and the life of the living wife of Captain Burton. It was the month of February, and good slaying.
Wow.
Like good, like Jingle Bell slaying.
Yeah.
It was I like that at the end. He officiated at the altar in the sacrifice to the demon vampire, who was believed to still be sucking the blood. It was the month of February and good slaying.
So he was talking about an altar to the demon vampire as if it were a thing that already existed and people would know where it is or something. Yeah,
that's the thing. It's it's a voodoo ritual. It's what it is. It's basically the same sort of thing.
Okay.
How they came up with this, like you gotta burn the ashes and stuff, I'm not sure. I don't find a lot of that in the original European vampire. You did have to like the vampire was really big in the what is now the Eastern Bloc, right? Like all the Serbs and the Slavs, big into this thing.
Yeah,
they would have, every local town would have a local vampire hunter. He would go and he'd dig up the bodies of the presumed vampire, and he'd put a stake through their heart and dress them with garlic and all this stuff. Here in America, we didn't put a stake through the heart. We just pulled out the heart and burned it and made it into ashes and then drank it.
That is wild, man.
The most documented of these was the case of Mercy Brown. She was a 19-year-old girl in Rhode Island, 1892. She was one of the last ones, but also the most well documented. So her family had consumption, and her mother died. Then her older sister died. And then she died. And then the son, Edwin, also was showing symptoms. And so the father, George, understandably is very distressed.
Yeah.
Wife died, first two daughters died. So someone convinces him, like, well, just try this, right? And he's like, fine. So they disinter the mother. She looks sufficiently rotted. They disinter the elder daughter, sufficiently rotted. They disinter Mercy, and Mercy is not sufficiently rotted. And Mercy still has liquid blood running around in her. Presumably, this is because she was buried more in the colder months. It had some level of preservation going on. But anyway, they took out her heart and they burned it. And then Edwin, the younger brother, drank it. And then he still died 2 months later. I always thought that would be a good country song, Drinking My Sister's Ashes. That's pretty dark.
That's pretty dark. Man.
But yeah, so that's part of the main history of the vampires. No one talks about the vampire panic in New England anymore, but it was a big thing. And there was also it was such a big thing that some people got in on it. And there's this man, I couldn't find very many sources talk about him, but there was some mention of this guy called Red Jack Averill. Mm-hmm. Red Jack is his name for his red hair. Okay. Red Jack Averill from Tennessee was a freelance American vampire hunter.
Wow.
In the 1800s. Now, this is the part where it gets confusing. It's like, what are they doing? Because this guy's life story is like, what is he? Is he just murdering random people and claiming it's a vampire? I don't know. But so he was born in 1811. He claimed to learn. He was in Tennessee, and he claimed to learn how to track and hunt vampires from the local Chickasaw Indians as a teenager.
So when you kill a vampire, don't they turn to ash? So he could just show up with a pile of ash and be like, "I got one."
Well, he would
That'll
show
be
up
$500.
He would show up with cut off heads.
Yikes!
So now here's the thing: he was in the U.S. Army to fight in the American-Mexican War, where his platoon seemed to claim that they were attacked by vampires in the night or something. And then Jack went into a cave in the morning and came out with the heads of vampires. I don't know what's going on with this guy. But he was then, so then he goes out west after the war and is hired by local towns to clear gold and silver mines of vampires. And then apparently was also enlisted by the Union Army to hunt down packs of vampires in the woods of Virginia.
By the Union Army?
Yes. Okay. Was hired by the Union Army to hunt down packs of vampires in the woods of Virginia. Now, you got to think, like, if he's going out and killing people in the woods of Virginia, who is he? What are these people doing? Are they, like, one is you could say, like, maybe they're weird occultists in the woods. Yeah. Maybe. Or maybe he's just going and killing some moonshiners and saying they were vampires. I have no idea. And it's not even 100% clear this guy's actually real. He may have just been legendary. But there's enough people talking. It's like, maybe. I don't know. But Red Jack's a weird. Anyway, he died in 1870 in Vienna after he got drunk one night and was ambushed and killed by a pack of vampires walking back to his hotel.
Oh, so they got him in the end, huh?
They got him in the end. I always found it weird that they're described as packs of vampires. Like these vampires are running around. I don't know. But Averill Jack, we should all strive to be like him.
I just imagine a bunch of emo kids running down the street when I think pack of vampires.
Yeah.
And they got like eyeliner on and they're wearing Jinkos and they have like a wallet chain, like back in the day.
Yes. So maybe there was definitely some weird stuff going on in New England, sacrificing to the demon vampire. Some voodoo. There may have been a few Southerners running around claiming to just murder people and saying they were vampires.
Wow.
There may have been some actual vampires because vampirism, despite all this, is actually real. And what I mean by that is that there are people who feast on the blood and fluids of the living and the young in order to get health benefits and long life. Yeah. And this is out in the open now. As you said, Peter Thiel he does this sort of stuff. And he should not, Peter. Don't be a vampire.
Stop it, Peter.
Stop, Peter. But it's a known thing in mice. This is not weird bro science. This is actual science. This is it's actual science because it's disgusting. Because a bit of animal cruelty always makes things look more professional.
Well, let's stop for a second, just a brief second, and say that when your worldview is entirely scientific and materialistic,
you're right.
Drinking the blood of the young for health benefits presents no issue for you.
Yeah. Well, I don't think they drink it. I think they inject it. But
whatever. You know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Right.
I know that if we don't point that out, there's going to be some guy like, well, actually, they don't drink it.
Actually. That's how they sound. That's how those guys sound.
Yeah. So anyway, in mice, what you do is if you sew two mice together because you're a sociopath and you hook up their veins, the older mouse will have some anti-aging effects.
Wow.
Like to the point where his gray fur will begin to turn brown again. Right? Mm-hmm. And this is the whole basis of stem cell therapy, is you take young cells. This is why embryonic stem cells were so valuable.
Yep.
Because embryonic stem cells is literally child sacrifice for vampiric purposes.
Yep.
In a clinical setting, that you sacrifice a child, you take the fluids, the stem cells, you inject them into another person because it gives health benefits, right?
Yep.
It's actual vampirism. And you get some of this through just having the younger blood in you. Mm-hmm. It's how it's because, it's in the Bible, the life is in the blood.
Yep.
Right. And so there's ways that you can sacrifice the blood for your own life. Right. And this has been going on and I think probably you can get these benefits by ingesting the blood and fluids to some degree, probably lesser than straight injecting it to your veins. But there's probably been people throughout history that have engaged in this practice. This is why in the folklore the vampires go after virgins, because they're young, right?
Well, Madame Bathory, Lady Bathory, what was her name?
Exactly. Yeah. This is a real thing that happens. They're not supernatural beings. Mm-hmm. They may be possessed by supernatural forces, demons, right? But they do. There is a strain of in history of people feasting on the blood of the younger in order to preserve their own life.
Yeah. And
this actually does medically work. And now in the whole pedophile ring conspiracies, there's a thread in it of this stuff called adrenochrome. Have you heard of adrenochrome?
I have. Yeah, this is dark stuff.
Dark stuff. Adrenochrome it's adrenaline, oxidated adrenaline. Mm-hmm. And so and it's also real. Like this is a medical compound that's sold. Mm-hmm. Now how they claim to make it, and I think they take adrenaline from animals and they oxidate it. Mm-hmm. But there's a theory going around that a more pure and more potent form can be made by terrorizing a victim so that their adrenaline goes up and then slaughtering them.
Yeah.
Then you drink the blood, right? Mm-hmm. You may do this with a child in your pedo ring or whatever, which is, I don't want to take it down that dark of a path, but that's what we're talking about here. When you talk about vampires are not good people.
No, they're bad people.
Vampires are very bad people, and they're increasingly out in the open. Adrenochrome, is harvested after you terrorize your victim to pull up their adrenaline, and then you kill them, and you harvest the adrenochrome from them. And this gives you this is like a little mini fountain of youth, right? By the way, no one do this now that you know about this. No one become a vampire. This isn't a how-to guide.
That's something that we can't disclaim against, because if you're the sort of person that's going to do it, no amount of disclaiming is going to stop you.
Well, it's like it's like those don't rape videos,
right?
It's like, look, just don't do it. Stop. In the name of love, before you become...
But it disturbs me how somebody like Peter Thiel, that's openly engaging in what is essentially vampirism, is this well-respected dude in government and, industry circles, and he's involved with the Republican Party, and, that is so disgusting.
It is, and that's why the vampire... In the early literature, the vampire was like a grotesque hunchback figure. But since like the, French Revolution times, he's been, in mythology, he's an aristocrat.
And now you've got Sparkly Edward, Edward the Twilight vampire, which is, what a horrendous thing. And this is, man, talk about a demonstration of a people that have had their aesthetic and moral sense just scoured away from them, and their conscience seared, just burned out by whatever. Pick your poison. But it's become so prevalent that Peter Thiel can go do a TED Talk on vampirism or whatever, and everybody's like, "Ooh, that's cool." #science. Holy cow! Like, where are we as a people?
Yeah. Now,
what have we become?
I am not claiming, nor do I suspect, that Peter Thiel terrorizes people and then murders them.
No, I'm not saying that. But it doesn't matter. I don't care how he gets the blood.
People do that.
I don't care if they come from donors or whatever.
Right. Yeah, no. That's like the height of liberalism and libertarianism. It's like, well, if they agree to be harvested, then why shouldn't we harvest it?
Yeah,
it's like if you don't see why that's wrong, I don't know how to help you.
Exactly. There's so much damage has been done to one's sense of aesthetics and right and wrong, and that's a crippled soul that can just say, "Oh, cool, Peter Thiel, man, he looks really healthy. Must be all the blood. I'll check into that.
Must be all the young blood he's injecting into his body."
Damn, dude, that's what I'm talking about. That's why we need to educate our own children.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also, guys, a lot of these benefits can just be had by regular exercise.
Yeah, or sunning your genitals.
Yeah. You don't need to drink the blood of the young.
No, okay? You don't.
And now, it may be better for your skin to drink the blood of the young. I'll give them that. I think the UV rays over a whole life will make you a little wrinkly. Mm-hmm. But it's not worth being a vampire over.
Don't be, it's not worth your soul.
It's not worth your soul. Now, here's where we get into the weird, like, we talk about this as out in the open, and it's so out in the open. There's a couple of companies that you can invest in that do this.
Of course, they've got an IPO, man.
Yeah, okay. So
the Wall Street bloodsuckers financing the actual bloodsuckers.
There's one company, which you mentioned before, Ambrosia.
Yep.
Okay. And they were founded in 2016. Now, Ambrosia I give them credit because on their website, which is the creepiest website you've ever seen, ambrosia.com, I think is what it is. Let me see. I wrote it down. So ambrosiaplasma.com. Okay. It's one website. It's one page. And at the top of it is like some young people in like an athletic sprint. These young girls, all three young, like teenage, like let's say 20-year-old girls in a nice like sprinting pose. And then it's like a nice clean page. And at the bottom, it has just a picture of a pristine clinical office. And it's just like, this is Blade. Yeah. These are the people from Blade.
Wow.
And I give them credit because they just straight up say on the website, we use young blood. Right. From the website, quote, our registered approved clinical trial successfully conducted from 2016 to 2018 found statistically significant improvements in biomarkers related to Alzheimer's disease, cancer, inflammation, and stem cells after a single treatment with young blood, parentheses, donor age 16 to 25, close parentheses. Patients in the clinical trial reported subjective improvements in athletics, memory, skin quality, sleep, and many other areas. 1 liter injection will cost you $5,500. 2 liters for $8,000, so you get a discount.
Oh, nice.
Quote, we do not network directly with donors. Our blood is obtained from licensed blood banks within the United States and is matched with your blood type. So when you donate blood to the Red Cross or whatever, some of it goes to vampires.
Wow.
And I don't know if it's actually the Red Cross. It may just be blood banks. So Red Cross, I'm sorry, I don't know if it's actually you. But when you donate blood at one of these blood banks, whatever it is, some of it is going to Ambrosia, which is, if you're 16 to 25, they will then give it to a sclerotic old man to put in his body to suck the life out of you.
Yep.
So don't do it.
Don't do it.
This is a very big incentive to not give blood all of a sudden.
Holy cow, yeah.
But I guess only if you're 16 to 25. If you're 26, go for it. Because
then it's just for, gunshot victims.
Yeah. Ambrosia was started by a dude named Jesse Karma. And I was like, Karma, really? Your last name's Karma?
Wow.
That's Karmazine. Which,
okay.
First part is karma, and then Karmazine sounds like, the trope about vampires is they always tell you they publicly do their name backwards. Like in public, Dracula goes about by the name Mr. Alucard, which is Dracula backwards.
Oh, weird.
So I was like, is Karmazine backwards Nizamrak? Is that like a Babylonian vampire name? And I Googled Nizamrak for a while, and all I found was this one crazy lady space opera story where she had a city named Nizamrak.
Oh.
So I don't think that's connected.
Okay.
But it did look like an interesting space story. Anyway, so he says Kamrazine, or should I just call him Nizamrak? Anyway, Jesse Karma guy says he was, quote, inspired by studies on mice that researchers had sewn together with their veins conjoined. So this is born out of a weird, morbid, like Frankenstein experiment. So you do your Frankenstein experiment where you sew two living beings together, and then you become a vampire company.
Yeah.
So it's all real, is what I'm saying. Like all these things actually happen in the real world. All right, there's another company called Alkahest, which is an alchemical term. Speaking back to our last show, the student of Johannes Tristan, I can never pronounce his last name, the guy that we talked about the first time, his student proposed this hypothetical universal solvent that he called Alkahest, right? Johannes Trethmesius, who we talked about last time, his student, Philip Paracelsus, proposed this stuff called Alkahest in his alchemy, and this new vampire company is called Alkahest. So I don't know what that's about. I just thought that was a strange connection.
Yeah.
You know, again, it's like the continuation of the alchemical dream. Like we talked about last time, we've got the lead and the gold thing, check. In nuclear reactors and stuff.
Yep.
We've got the homunculus AI, check. Now we're after the Fountain of Youth with vampirism and the Alkahest company, right? That's the three things of the alchemist dream.
Yeah.
So anyway, it was started by a Stanford University neuroscientist named Tony Weiss-Corey, which if your last name has a hyphen in it, I'm automatically a little suspicious.
Amen to that.
But so it was to, quote, test transfusions of plasma from young people in the treatment of Alzheimer's disease. So I don't think they give you the straight blood. I think they process it a little bit. They get the good stuff out.
Yep.
Leave behind the junk. But anyway, so you got this company named this old alchemical thing, right? From the Alkahest website, it says, quote, which their website is it's a little less creepy. It's a little more dolled up. And they obfuscate the fact that they're just using young blood and putting it in people.
Gotcha.
Like the Ambrosia company just says, here's what we do. Here's $8,000 for 2 liters of blood. Right? Very upfront. The Alkahest is a little more like hidden. It's like, we do it's plasma. And they talk about this thing called chronokines, which is Greek for time changers. Ooh. They invent this molecular particle called chronokines, which, as far as I can tell, they just coined that term themselves. It says, targeting specific chronokines, the proteins that increase or decrease with age, allows us to create therapeutics that modulate a wide range of I can never say this word. Deleterious age-related disease mechanisms and with unique precision. These include Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's, age-related muscular degeneration, and others. Wow. So they invented this term called chronokines, which means time change or protein or something. And they claim to be able to. This is all getting very alchemical again. The time changers in your blood, in your body, they're going to use young blood to and you can find this on alkahest.com. It's ALKAHEST.com, right? And again, it's one of these creepy blade-like vampire companies, which you takes blood from young people, apparently from blood banks. I don't know where Alkahest gets it. Ambrosia said they get it from blood banks, but and gives it to old people for youthful purposes, which is creepy and weird. Yep. So, and again, they're not overly forthcoming on Alkahest about what's going on. They just make it sound like, you get some treatments and it's like stem cells and doo-ba-doo-ba-doo, right? They don't really say what's happening. But the whole vampire thing, it really does work, right? Like there was a case of in bone marrow transfusions, which not necessarily evil, right? I mean, I think it has the potential to be where this comes from. But that's a legit treatment, right?
Well, I'll admit there's a blurry line on some of this stuff. Like, I want to save the gunshot victim with some donated blood. I don't want him to die.
Right.
And I don't know where the lines are. I'll admit that.
But taking blood from a young person to extend the life of an old person.
Yeah.
Anyway, so bone marrow transfusions do work, and they've had some crazy anti-aging effects in some people.
Oh yeah,
because that's where your stem cells are. So if you take the bone marrow of bone marrow is where your blood is made. Mm-hmm. Your bones are not these dry things that you see in a skeleton. That's like looking at a trunk of a cut down tree. Mm-hmm. The living bone is actually very active. It makes a lot of stuff. In your bones is where your blood comes from. So when they do the bone marrow, you get the DNA of the younger person. And there was this one case of a guy, he was like, I don't know, maybe 52, something. Mm-hmm. Got a bone marrow transplant from a young donor that had presumably died, and they took the bone marrow. And his hair was white, and it went back to its normal color.
Woo!
Lost a lot of wrinkles. He felt way better. I'm not sure how long this lasted. But it has, it does do it. And then, but here's the thing, the thing about the vampire is you can't see yourself in the mirror, right? And the folklore is always right. It's always right, even if you don't understand it. I don't know how this works, but there's this guy named Chris Long of Reno, Nevada. Okay. So he had a bone marrow transplant for a perfectly legitimate medical reason. But he also had some friends that were police officers, and they thought they'd heard about this DNA thing, and they thought, could this have issues for us if this becomes widespread? Let's do some tests, because will this mess up our DNA evidence? If some guy has the DNA of another person in him, like what's going to happen with him? So they did some tests, and they found that within 3 months, the DNA in his blood had changed. It had been replaced mostly by the blood of his donor, a German man who lived 5,000 miles away. Wow. So that has obviously some criminal justice implications. 4 years later, the swabs of his lips and cheeks had both his DNA and his donor's. Now, here's the kicker. All of the DNA in his semen belonged to his donor.
Whoa.
Well, yeah. So, again, you can't see yourself in the mirror because when you do these things, you lose yourself. In the words of this own guy, this Chris Long, he said, quote, I thought it was pretty incredible that I can disappear and someone else can appear. So even he's recognizing, he's not connecting this to vampirism, but the same thing, I can disappear. You lose yourself. You can't see yourself in the mirror. The vampirism, you lose your soul and you lose yourself. Wow. Right? So I don't know if he had a child, would it be genetically this other person's? I guess so.
If it's someone else's DNA in his semen, yeah,
it's very strange. But but yeah, all this stem cell stuff, this bone marrow stuff, it all does this anti-aging, youthful effect. But you do lose part of yourself, and that's not to say it's all bad. Like my kids, I had this. I did the placental cord blood thing. You take part of the cord, umbilical cord, and you harvest and freeze the stem cells from them. And if they have certain blood or other diseases later in life, this is a source that they can be healed from, right? Right. And there's also there's animal stem cells, which I'm not overly against, and there's just getting stem cells from fat tissue, adipose, But then there's the harvesting the sacrificing the embryos and getting the stem cells, right? Yeah, so the human sacrifice, that side of it, it's like you suddenly cross over from one thing to whoa, that's really over the line all of a sudden. Right. But yeah, and the thing about it is you said this Peter Thiel, these people can go around just in broad daylight because the vampire model is an aristocrat who's he has a glimmer about him. He's well accepted by society. And he's everyone wants to be around him, right? He's got all these powers.
He is sort of grown-up version of Edward the Sparkly Vampire.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And Peter Thiel is Edward the grown-up sparkly vampire. Yeah, that's right. But yeah, so vampirism is real, and you should be on the lookout for it. And maybe those people back in the olden times weren't so weird for having vampire hunters if people were going around doing that sort of thing.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you think like the Madame Bathory thing, bathing in the blood of virgins and stuff, she was brought to justice over that. So I guess there you go, vampire hunter executing justice against Madame Bathory.
Maybe Red Jack Averill. Maybe there's just a lot of people in Virginia that were doing this thing at the time.
Yeah.
And he was doing a public justice, or maybe he was just randomly murdering people in the woods and saying, I'm a vampire hunter. I don't know. It's hard to say.
Kind of hard to know. But I just feel like it's interesting how, as a society, we went through this whole materialist worldview thing. It's like, ghosts and vampires and goblins, that's all a bunch of, it's a bunch of Stone Age superstition and nonsense. And now they're like, but by the way, I'm a vampire.
Yeah, that's what I mean. This stuff always comes back.
Man.
It's to connect it with the original thing.
Oh.
When your mythology collapses and then you build your new world, you reject whatever came before it.
Yeah.
But then you cast it off as nonsense. But then you still have the same thing, you just interpret it in a new way.
Right. So in the chaos phase, vampirism has bubbled back up to the surface and is now being seriously considered by society.
Yes. Yeah. In the world building phase. And so we have to stop that.
So I don't want the world that's being built right now to include vampirism as a legitimate life choice.
Yeah. You should not. And in the listen, all of you goth kids, this is partly your fault. All of you kids that dressed in black 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And you wore the chains.
Yep.
It's partly your fault.
Yep.
I'm not going to say it's all your fault, but it's partly your fault.
This is the Jinko Jeans Company.
Listen, Victor, I know you're listening, Victor. This is your fault. Victor wore a lot of goth.
Yeah.
Victor was my Mexican friend, my illegal Mexican friend, who I think he was deported at some point.
Okay.
Because he was not he tried to go get a driver's license.
Was he into Santa Muerte?
No, he was purely performative.
Okay.
He just did this that was his thing in high school, was just to be the goth kid.
It's just a cry for help.
Just a Mexican, not even a cry for help. He was just Mexican. That's just being Mexican. You know, the Day of the Dead Skulls thing. They like to do that sort of thing.
Sure.
And so he was just into the goth stuff. Still a little bit, really.
Yeah.
But so it's partly Peter Thiel is partly Victor's fault. That's all I'm saying. Okay,
Victor, I hope you're listening.
AmbrosiaPlasma.com is partly your fault, Victor.
Man.
It's partly your fault, and it's and all the other goth kids that shopped at Hot Topic.
Mm-hmm.
Every single child that is sacrificed on an altar is partly your fault, Hot Topic shoppers. Every single one. You need to think about that.
Man, I went into a Hot Topic one time when I was in high school. I think I bought a bumper sticker.
Are they still around? They can't still be around, are they?
I repent of my purchase of a bumper sticker from Hot Topic.
Good. I can't imagine they're still around. I haven't been in a mall in ages, so.
Do malls still exist?
There's still some around. I think there's a mall near me where you get shot if you go to it. That's not very often, but it happens. Yeah. Often enough that people no longer go.
Gotcha. Well, we covered a lot of ground today.
We did. I think it was good. I think it's going to help a lot of people. Mm-hmm. I think Victor's going to do some soul searching.
That's good. If you can just reach one kid, you just gotta. It's like the public school teacher. If I can just reach one kid, it's all worth it. All the other kids are screwed, but if I can just reach one kid,
Yeah. None of my kids are in the high schools.
Yeah.
So I don't know if do they still have the goth in the high schools? I don't know.
I don't know. I think it's been replaced by like neon colors. It's the same attitude, but now it's neon instead of black.
Well,
and you dye your hair blue instead of black.
Sparkly rainbow vampires of the future.
Yeah, it's more about feces and unicorns than it was about eyeliner and blood.
America, land of the blue-haired feces.
So we went from blood to feces and black eyeliner to blue hair. But I think the attitude is still there, you know.
Well, that's important. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if it was. Anyway, guys, the point is, vampirism is real. I'm not suggesting anyone go become a vampire hunter and kill people in Virginia.
Yeah, don't do that. Not MAPS approved behavior.
Not MAPS approved. MAPS is a religion of peace.
It's not a religion, oh man.
Well, yeah, right. It's not. This isn't a cult.
I'm going to start the outro before we go any further off the rails.
It's a religion of peace.
We're so peaceful, man. Don't drink blood, everybody.
Hamburger, bang, bang!